Look at these things that are rapidly approaching, these mathematical unavoidable rubicons that once you cross over, you don't come back. Just like the 130% debt to GDP ratio that we are at right now. There's never been a country ever that's crossed that line and hasn't defaulted, either by outright default or hyperinflation.
This is Kaiser Johnson with Liberty and Finance, and this is the Miles Franklin Weekly Special for November 6th through November 13th, 2023, while supplies last. This week we feature 3 different specials: 1-ounce Silver Kangaroos at $3.10 over spot, 5-gram Platinum Pamp bars at $25 over melt, and 2.5-gram gold Valcambi bars at $25 over melt. First, the 2023 Silver Kangaroo from Australia are renowned for their 4/9 fine purity, as well as their recognizability and design. Like many other coins, they come 25 to a tube. However, unlike others, the Australian Monster Box is just 250 coins, making it the most affordable Monster Box available, especially with a premium of just $3.10 over spot per ounce. Next, we have the 5-gram Platinum bar from Pamp Swiss Mint at just $25 over melt. Many consider platinum to be highly undervalued at the moment, since over the last 30 years, platinum has generally been significantly more expensive than gold, but currently sits at less than half the spot price, and Pamp is one of the top mints of Switzerland, giving you access to a premier bar in a premier metal at one of the lowest prices in 20 years. Finally, from another great Swiss mint, Valcambi, comes a 4/9 fine 2.5-gram gold bar. The small size of a 2.5-gram bar gives you excellent flexibility and liquidity, while the Valcambi name provides great trust, and all at just $25 over melt. All our specials this week are IRA eligible, and if you'd like to learn more about a precious metals IRA, call us, and we'll be happy to help you in that process. To order our specials or any of the many other options we have available, call us at 1-888-81-LIBERTY. That's 1-888-815-4237. We're available after hours and on weekends, and we look forward to speaking with you.
Welcome back to Liberty and Finance. We're always delighted to have this returning guest. Andy Schectman is the CEO of Miles Franklin Precious Metals, and he joins us for a weekly market update every week. We're recording this for Tuesday, November 7th, 2023. Andy, thanks for coming back on Liberty and Finance.
Great to be here. Thanks, Dunnigan.
I wanted to follow up with you. Last week we spoke about some common challenges that many clients are facing when they finally reach that tipping point. They've been educating themselves on this channel and many other alternative sources of information to the point where they become convinced that it's important to be outside the banking system, outside the dollar, outside the destruction of their purchasing power for their earnings, their retirement, their savings that are caused by inflation. And they want to finally take action. They want to do it now. So they call up and request, can they purchase metals right away? And we tell them, well, you got to have funds free and clear. So we talked about that it's always going to be necessary for people to liquidate their stocks, liquidate their bonds or CDs or whatever, get their money out of their retirement accounts or do a rollover into a new precious metals IRA if that's what they want to do before they can lock in a purchase with cleared funds. There's another issue that's come up around that, and that is how long will the availability of this pricing regime that's been very favorable for people to accumulate in this. You've pointed out several times that we've seen the best prices in the last several years, just the last quarter or so. And watching our channel watches Gregory Mannarino from the traderschoice.net, and he announced this morning that the Fed took extraordinary actions last week to buy up the bonds and to lower the 10-year rate by doing that, and that he thinks that they will, and that also buoyed the stock market, and he thinks that they are likely to continue that course of action with extraordinary additional funds for the remainder of this year, which would tend to continue to buoy the stock market and continue to provide favorable pricing for people who do want to accumulate real assets like gold and silver that we've been talking about, which both of those actions actually help the very richest fraction of a percent of the people, because their executive bonuses and so on are often based on the stock price of their companies, which will be nicely fattened by that. But also, we, as you've pointed out to us, that people who are in the know and who are well-heeled are in fact accumulating metals at a record pace. So could you address that phenomenon that we're seeing as this regime of pricing continuing is what Gregory Mannarino expects, but then there's always the availability to be concerned about as well?
Yeah, first of all, he's one of my favorite I think he's not only does he have great information, he's quite entertaining to watch. And he's right. I mean, look, they're manipulating in the short run, but the consequences or the damage that they're doing in the long run is horrific. These people have absolutely zero fiscal restraint. They spend money and go deeper into debt. In other words, monetizing the Federal Reserve, buying the back end of the bond market as if there will never be any consequences. And I think it's truly ignorant. And I think these people are chronic liars by the way that they have doctored the gauges for measurement of things like inflation. They talk, for example, the strength in the dollar as an example. And you could say that in many respects is illusionary, a country that is now $33.7 trillion in debt. And they've added more than $500 billion to the debt just in the month of October. But the strength of the dollar with this inordinate, unjustified, unbacked strength of the dollar is what has brought the CPI down, which is a lie anyway, from 9% earlier in the year to 3% now. It's a lie. And when you look at the amount of debt that they are adding on to this, it's only a matter of time before the dollar loses its strength globally, as there are challengers that are chipping away at the dollar hegemony over and over and over again. We've discussed this, and that's coming. And is just the fact that with every one of these manipulations, as Gregory's talking about, he's right. They're manipulating it into the end of the year, but with every one of these immoral acts, they put us deeper and deeper and deeper in the hole. As an example, the Congressional Budget Office is already projecting that by 2031, that's just a couple of years away now, 6-7 years away, that the government will spend 100% of all the tax revenue that it brings in just on mandatory entitlement programs like Social Security and the rising interest on the debt. And, so that basically means that everything else that they do to run the government will have to be borrowed into existence. And that's just 7 years away. And then let's not forget, in 2033, Social Security will be technically broke, insolvent, but it already is. It's over 70 trillion underfunded. And so I think that this becomes a really big problem. And when you understand that by these manipulations, that these short-term distractions that they're doing, these artificial purchases of the back end of the bond market to lower rates, and now you're going to see the yield curve start to re-invert again instead of uninvert, because it was the back end rising that was uninverting the yield curve. It wasn't the fact that what we normally see is the Fed coming in and lowering the short-term interest rates. That's not happening. This is all more, it's just not natural. And the more that you do to mess with the markets and Mother Nature, if you will, the greater the consequences in the end, at the expense of future generations for sure. But this is accelerating to the point where this will be something that we're all going to witness here, I think, before very long, as the rest of the world just becomes tired of manipulation, of deceit, of the transition, if you will, from Bretton Woods 2 to Bretton Woods 3. Bretton Woods 2, a system that you could argue has been dominated by the lack of transparency in debt instruments, into one that will be transparency in commodities. And we're moving in the opposite direction that the rest of the world is doing. So if they're giving us a subsidy to buy gold and silver at these levels because they're going to try and make things look better than they are, to secure big bonuses for Wall Street, or whatever the reason is, it's a gift. Yeah, it gets old and long in the tooth sometimes, but look at these things that are rapidly approaching, these mathematical unavoidable rubicons that once you cross over, you don't come back. Just like the 130% debt to GDP ratio that we are at right now. There's never been a country ever that's crossed that line and hasn't defaulted, either by outright default or hyperinflation. So unless the laws of economics and of history are being rewritten, with the United States being the exception at this time, then I would think these are great deals and great subsidies, and something not to be discouraged by, but actually see as a benefit for your family and for yourself. And that's the truth.
Yeah, speaking of families, we've had an increase in the number of family members that are bringing in either their parents or their children or their brothers and sisters, whatever, as referrals in looking for metals. And for the longest time, what we kept hearing, and this is for all those out there who've put comments under our videos that they never hear anything new on our videos. For the longest time, what we were hearing was that you couldn't convert anybody. They weren't interested. They thought you were crazy. The people who watched our channel were the black sheep of the family, and nobody wanted to hear what they had to say. They thought they were all tinfoil hat wearers. Well, the last 3 years have turned a lot of minds away from thinking that their family members who look at independent sources of information are tinfoil hat wearers, because they've been proven more right more often than wrong. And now we're seeing an increase in family members coming in and saying, either the person sends them or they actually are on the phone with them, helping to guide them into this process. And the fact that it's so novel to so many reinforces what you've told us and what Rick Rule have told us time and again, and that is what a small fraction of a percent, less than 0.5% is what I recall, of the overall investments that people have are in either precious metals or precious metals related stocks. So any thoughts you have on sort of this awakening and that being evidenced by the broadening and the interest shown on the parts of close friends and family members that maybe weren't interested in the past?
Yeah, and when you talk about not seeing anything new, I mean, look at how the story we used to call the linear progression of events has unfolded. And yes, the linear progression is my only focus, because it is growing every single day with legitimacy. And I become more and more certain that the path that I have been walking for quite some time is the right one to be on. And not everyone has followed you for as long as some people have. And yes, I am guilty of being redundant, because to me, the rest is noise. Everything around us is noise, and the periphery is noise. You have to keep your eye on the ball, which is growing with legitimacy every single day all around us. And when you talk about the elite who are always a step or two ahead, done again. I mean, Blackrock just redeemed almost 8 million ounces of silver from PSLV. Well, that's not something we've said very often. We talk about SLV, GLD, we talk about the LBMA, we talk about the COMEX, we even talk about the Shanghai Metals Exchange. But we're seeing copious deliveries off of these exchanges. Well, now we see BlackRock delivering almost 8 million ounces out of, or taking possession of, almost 8 million ounces out of PSLV. We see Russia increasing its gold reserves. If we are to believe the information the central banks are telling us, I think some of it's true. They're probably accumulating much more than they tell us, but they've increased it now to where it is the largest holdings in modern Russian history. So you have all of these countries and these institutions that are not only the biggest money in the world, but arguably closest to the information. Certainly BlackRock, the largest hedge fund in the world, and the Russian central bank at the cusp of accumulating metal to break free from the Western hegemony. And the same thing is true of India and of Saudi Arabia and of China. These countries continue to load up on metal. So yeah, I do. I think it's no surprise. And again, you don't have to be much of an economist to understand that things are getting concerning in this country and around the world. So I think it just is logical that people are finally waking up to it. And even though they are waking up to it, most of them are waking up to it for different reasons than what we've been talking about, the same old information. Well, put it all together, and that same old information is really why people are waking up in a different way. I mean, it's the move away from the West and the Western system and the Western history in terms of its ideology, in terms of its morality, in terms of its character. It's all breaking down globally, whether it be internationally or domestically, and the manifestation of all of this chaos, of the lack of harmony and unity, and all of these things here domestically play into the de-dollarization globally. And whatever it is, it's waking people up. I think it's about time. And that's the only hope that we have is, knowledge is power. To take care of yourself and your family, get prepared get out of the way of what's coming, because the biggest money in the world, like the central banks, like the commercial banks, or the biggest hedge funds in the world, see exactly what's coming, and they're using the ignorance, I guess you could say, of the masses, the lack of integrity and honesty by the media, and the price suppression of the West to reposition, while the rest of us, most of us, not those listening to you, done again, but most people sit idly by and are going to get caught off guard by something when something triggers this next whatever it may be, whatever that next may be. So yeah, the fact that people are waking up, great. I think it's about time. And yeah, these are the best premiums we've seen since 2019. They have not taken off yet. They haven't risen yet. If anything, they've stabilized at the bottom as gold is real close to its all-time high. I think it's the fact that silver hasn't really done what people expect it to do yet, and I understand that, because it's been the majority of this industry's business for the past 3-4 years. So you got a lot of people that are a little bit let's just say disheartened by the lack of upside potential, or upside movement rather, not potential, but movement. Remember, that's not why we're buying it. We're not buying it to get rich. We're buying it because it is wealth. It will exert itself, but at the expense of a dollar that starts to lose ground from its lofty highs that we find it at right now.
It was very interesting that you just mentioned BlackRock, the largest hedge fund. There's something rotten about the founding of BlackRock in the way that it spun out of the last global financial collapse, and how it seemed to be a collaboration of government putting together with so-called private business to put together this hedge fund that rapidly became the largest of all. And we did an interview with Alex Newman, correspondent for the Epoch Times and also the founder of Liberty Sentinel. And I'll put a link to that in the description of this video. I'm going to make a note here. We'll put the cover of, it was called BlackRock Masters of the Universe, and it talks about how they have got their fingers in, basically because of their managing our own money. People's own retirement accounts are what they use as the ammunition then to deny access to capital through pressure they put on the banks and on corporations, to force the corporations. Because so many people have been asking, why are these corporations going woke? Why are they following some of these ESG guidelines that even undermine the very mission of the company, undermine its profitability, undermine the value to the shareholders, et cetera? It makes no sense. Well, it doesn't make sense until you say maybe that's not the master. Maybe they're not actually trying to serve their original mission. Maybe they're being forced, in cases, their hand being forced, some of these businesses, by sources of capital, including BlackRock. And then you added another piece to that puzzle today when you said BlackRock just managed to be an off-taker of physical metal from the exchange. Can you talk to us a bit more about what we know about that?
I don't know a whole lot, other than the fact that they just took possession of 7.8 million ounces of silver from PSLV. And, what's interesting is that, if I'm not mistaken, they're one of the backers of SLV at the same time, or the custodian, one of the custodians, along with, custodian might not even be the right word, administrators, BlackRock is, of the iShares, iTrust Fund, the SLV. But all I know is that they took possession of almost 8 million ounces. I find it to be interesting that, here again, as the price of silver is not doing a whole lot, you have the big money taking possession. I mean, doesn't you see how that's so ironic? And that's really what's been happening for the last 2 years, 3 years off of the exchanges. Hold down the paper price, take possession of the physical. If you have enough money to do that, and you're close enough to the top, we don't have to worry about the ramifications of doing things like that. Sure, you can do that. When you talk about Larry Fink and BlackRock, I mean, there was an article I read a few months ago where he called the CEOs of every single company they invest in and said, hey, if you don't follow these guidelines, then we can't invest with you, these woke guidelines. And they control such a large percentage of the float of these companies that, if they don't do it, the ramifications are pretty substantial. So yeah, it's everything's upside down as it pertains to the financial system. And that's why I have such a hard time understanding. Well, I guess it's just the fact people don't understand gold largely, because it's really liberation from all of this nonsense, and the removal of the counterparty risk, and the removal of all of these types of woke ideologies that are, instead of hiring people based upon their qualifications, we're hiring them on their gender or on their race or whatnot, and that's just so not only anti-American, capitalistic, just doesn't make sense. And if you want to have the best product and the best team, then you shouldn't care what color they are, who they sleep with at night, where they grew up, what their race is, none of that stuff, what their beliefs are they punctual, are they on time, do they work well with people, do they have initiative? These are the things that as a business owner should matter, not, what color they are or what gender they are. And it's really crazy that people, don't make that connection. One of the benefits of owning metals right now, or any assets, even cryptocurrencies in your own possession, anything would be better than being beholden to a system that's lost its bearings. And certainly that's what a lot of these corporations like Disney seem to have done. You can't even watch any of their movies anymore. They're unbearable. And that comes from a dad who, 3 kids who watched lots of them growing up. When they were growing up, you see them now, and it's crazy. Anyways, enough ranting on that. But yeah, I think that a sign of the times. And again, I guess I will say that my linear progression of events is something I've never lost sight of. And it's growing by the day. So yes, I will be the little boy who cries wolf. I will be the person who speaks redundantly upon something that is continuing to unfold, and screaming at people to open up their eyes and see it. And there are a lot of people who talk about it now and who do see it, and it's becoming undeniable. And yet, with every day, it becomes, I think, more and more certain. Look, as an example, we talk a lot about the BRICS, right? And we've talked about that for quite some time. All of these deals that are being struck outside the dollar. Here's one more, at least, to think about. Qatar just signed its second 27-year liquid natural gas deal with China, with Sinopec. And they have 2 27-year deals in place now. And the first one that they did was the longest time frame in history. And now they just did a second one. These are massive, massive, massive deals. And little by little, these deals, which always used to settle in dollars, well, they're not. They're being written in yuan. And so this is a deal that is breaking the hegemony of the dollar and of the petrodollar little by little until it's all at once. Not there yet, but this progression of events. Every day there's something to talk about. Today is no different. Some days are more, some days are less. But to me, that's all that matters. Everything else, it's just noise as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, there's that famous quote that first they'll say it's not true. Then after its truth can no longer be denied, they'll say it's not important. And after its importance is no longer in question, they'll say, well, after all, it's not new. So that'll be the greatest form of flattery eventually you'll get, is people saying, this is old news. So there you go. And so for those of our viewers who want to be prepared, that's why they've been watching us since 2013, many of them, they want to be ahead of the crowd. They want to have what their family needs. And in many cases, we might take a clue from the actions, watch their actions, not their words, of the most well-informed and well-funded, and that is to acquire physical assets. One of the assets that's the most universal, obviously precious metals. A weekly special has been helpful to many of our viewers in being able to afford that. So what is our announced weekly special for this week?
I got to put my glasses on to see them. I'm sorry. I got to the 2023 Silver Kangaroo at $310 over spot. Those are cool coins. They're mini mint boxes at $250. They're the purest silver coin in the world at 4 nines, 9999. They're lovely, and they are $310 over spot. We have the Valcambi, which is roughly a 70-year-old Swiss refinery, one of the most respected in the world. We have their 2.5 gram gold bars at $25 over melt. The theme of this special, all three items, is utility, barterability, fractionality, the way to trade outside the system if you ever had to. Heaven forbid, but who knows? So we got the Silver Kangaroos at $3.10. We got the 2.5 gram gold bars from the Swiss Valcambi mint. Those are also $4.9 fine at $25 over the melt value, 2.5 grams. And then also from Valcambi's neighbor in Switzerland, the Pamp, P-A-M-P, the Pamp Swiss mint, the Fortuna 5 gram platinum bar, Lady Fortuna. And those are $25 over melt value as well. So those are 5 grams. And look, if you're looking for some fractional platinum, some fractional gold, or a 1 ounce silver coin, these are great. These are very, very, very well respected name brand refineries and or sovereign mint. And we'll keep trying to bring things to you each week that are gold, silver, and platinum, and having a little bit of barterability, functionality, small pieces to give as gifts or to your family or to use. Heaven forbid we need it. Not a bad idea to prepare for anything that is uneventual, at least on our radar screen. So that's what we got today, and I appreciate being here this week, Duncan. I look forward to picking up where we left off next week. I'm sure there'll be lots more to talk about.
Well, it certainly has been a time of concerning developments. We just saw another bank failure in the past week. We'll have to talk more about that. That was in Iowa, I believe. So we'll talk more about that next time, is the stability of the banking system, because that remains something else that people can no longer take for granted as they could in the past.
We won't talk about it, but I'll say it's ironic. I think it's kind of ironic that what are the odds of Bank of America, Chase, and Wells Fargo all glitching on the same day that Citizens Bank in Iowa collapses? Yeah, we should talk about that. I'm surprised we didn't today, but we'll save that for next time. But that's, the banking system is in big trouble, and I think that's where it all begins, really. I think that's where things get really nuts in this country. But we'll save that for next time. In the meantime, I hope you and everyone else out there has a great rest of your week and stays well, and look forward to chatting with you next week, Duncan.
Thanks, Andy.
Miles Franklin Precious Metals is one of America's oldest and most trusted bullion dealers. Miles Franklin is A+ rated and accredited by the Better Business Bureau, licensed and bonded, and has 0 complaints ever registered. Here at Liberty and Finance, we are licensed brokers with Miles Franklin. To order, simply call us, discuss your needs, and we can let you know our live inventory, prices, and availability, and lock in your order over the phone. Once your order is locked, the price is held for you regardless of market fluctuations, and the metals are reserved for you awaiting your settled payment. Within 1 business day of ordering, you will receive an email invoice detailing the order and payment instructions. Miles Franklin accepts payments by bank wire, ACH or electronic check, money order, check mailed priority mail, and cryptocurrency. The fastest forms of payment are bank wire and cryptocurrency. Upon settled payment, metals will ship out within 3 to 5 business days. You will receive tracking information via email. Domestic shipping charges are $15 for any order under 500 ounces of silver or 10 ounces of gold. For orders larger than that, domestic shipping is free. The package will be boxed, fully insured, and labeled discreetly, with no indication of the contents inside. For your privacy, the name Miles Franklin will not even be on the package. To talk to myself, Kaiser, my brother Elijah, or my father Dunnigan, call 1-888-81-LIBERTY. That's 1-888-815-4237.